Welcome to the 312th episode of the Jami Dulaney Plant-Based Wellness Podcast. My name is Jami Dulaney, and I'm your host. I'm a plant-based cardiologist and endurance athlete living in Southwest Florida. Welcome, and thank you for listening. Like I said, I'm an endurance athlete. If you don't listen to this podcast in the past, currently I'm training for a 50K race in September, followed by a swim run, long course in November, and a 50-miler in January. I guess put December, the CIM marathon. I'm also happy to report that I'm also a Rad Rabbit athlete, which basically means that I like to run in rabbit gear, and I'm a plant-based cardiologist and a little different from the rest of the world. But anyway, that's how that goes. So today's podcast, what does a book on metabolism have to do with running, LSD, the Hadza tribe in Africa, plant-based nutrition, anxiety, and Johnson & Johnson sunscreen? So that's your highlight for today. Let's see if I can pull all that together. As I said in the beginning, I'm training for a 50K, so July was the month that it's time to start thinking about ramping up the mileage. So the plan is to run most days during the week. Friday, I am reserving for swimming. Saturday, a long run. Sunday, a not so long, moderate run. And then Monday will be a rest day on occasion. So probably about every 10 days, I may take a rest day. I do at least one strength training session a week. That's going to have to increase a little bit. So that's kind of where we are right now. So last Saturday, I wasn't too real excited about going out for my 15-miler. So I have to do a little self-talk, so to speak. And, my mantra is just get out the door. You can go slow. Let's see how it goes. I take Sophie, my almost 1-year-old German Shepherd, with me that's squealing in the background because she wants to play ball for the first 3.5-4 miles. And she's doing really good. We started by walking and then adding a little running in, and now she can keep the pace pretty good. We have to slow down for cars. We slow down for meet and greets, but it's a nice way to warm up for that first 3.5-4 miles. And then I go out on my own and do a longer loop. And I'm a barn runner, so I try to stay away from the house. So I go out and try not to come back to the house until I'm finished. So I try to run where there's parks and water stops, and I usually carry a couple gels or chews with me. And this week, while running down the street that I always run down, there was a box of my favorite fruit saying free mango. And of course, I'm running away, so I wasn't coming back. It's like, if that's still here when I come back, I'm going to grab a mango to take. Because as you all know, I really love mangoes, and there are all these different kind of varieties, so we're always keen to try different varieties and maybe save a seed or so and try to start one. So that was my thought process. So I got to my turnaround and came back, and sure enough, the mangoes were still there. So I grabbed one that was pretty firm so that I could carry it in my hand or my waist pack. And then I thought, why carry this for another 5 or 6 miles if it's not any good? So there were some really ripe ones there, so I decided to try one. So I stopped on the side of the road. If you've ever peeled a mango, if they're really ripe, the skin will just kind of come off. So I peeled the mango and sat right over a kind of drainage ditch, or stood right over a drainage ditch, and ate that mango, and then it was really, really good. It was very ripe, and carried on. And turns out, again, it was really good, so I kept the green one and went on about my run, and I felt great. That was the best 5 or 6 finishing miles that I've had in a long time. And I got to blame the mango, so it was just the right, I didn't have any stomach issues with it. It was hydrating, perked me up. So I got to say, running on mangoes is not a bad thing. So I used that I'm going to come back and check out the mangoes as a distraction for, instead of just counting one more mile. It's like, okay, where is this? And then I turn around and I come back and I have something to look forward to midway. I also break up my runs. I run to water stop. You get to the final turnaround, then you just have to come back. And I go to a park, and it's a nice place to look out over a walk. And so I use that to break up and my run up, and that helps all. Because I think you have to play games. You have to play games with your long runs. You have to play games with your nutrition, with yourself, so that it keeps interesting and you keep mindful about it, but you don't become overwhelmed. The other thing that I thought was, well, what would I be doing if I wasn't running? What would I rather be doing? And the reality of it is I do like to be outside and running, so I didn't want to be inside doing something. So that was good. I had that time allotted for running. Again, positive reinforcement to get you through something that maybe just, you could also talk yourself out of. It's hot, it's very humid, it's sweaty, I'm going to be tired. I have to go to the hospital afterwards to make rounds. All these other negative things could come in, but just kind of keep focusing on the task at hand makes things very pleasant. And again, the mango really helped things a lot. I use the same thing about swimming. Something about swimming, the first getting in and getting wet first thing in the morning, I'm not too keen on that either. And so I've got to kind of talk myself into that whole process. And I found a new pool very close by that's a 50-meter pool, so it's really like swimming in open water because you can go 50 meters without having to do a turnaround. And but again, I had to go to a new pool, so it's a new place, and so I got in the water, and 50 meters is really good. You don't have to keep doing flip turns, and I was really enjoying that. And again, start talking about what would you rather do? This is your rest day from running. Let your legs heal. The water's very soothing and very relaxing, and the sun is coming up. And, again, talk myself through that, and, really enjoying my new swim place at the Centennial Park in Northport. I guess it's still Port Charlotte. So I swim and I run and I lift weights, and I used to bike. Haven't been biking for a while. As my means of exercise. It's my favorite form of exercise. I used to golf way back when, but it takes too long, and it's not really cardiovascular, and I just don't find it a good use of my time and for exercise. But those are my things that I do for exercise. And I do them to keep physically fit, to keep mobile. Because of those things, I need to do stretching, so that keeps me mobile. I am happy to say probably the end of next month, I'm having Katie Bowman on the podcast. I'm very excited about that because she has a new book about mobility and acts of daily living to keep moving. And the stretching and mobility that I do is all part of me trying to stay active and to keep my running and my other activities going without getting injured. But what does it do for my metabolism? And I often hear people say to me when they come in the office, well, I gained a few pounds because I haven't been exercising, and I was traveling, and, it was hot and I couldn't go out, or it was cold and I couldn't go out, or it's humid and I couldn't go out, and my ankle hurts and I couldn't go out, and I just haven't been exercising, so I've gained some weight. And so is there any credence to that? Is that the reason why people gain weight? Is that the reason why as people get older that they gain weight? Even though gym memberships have gone up tremendously, marathon running has become a boom. You see people running all over the place. 5Ks are more crowded than ever. There's mud runs. There's all these different things. And yet people keep getting heavier and heavier. So are they really exercising? And is a lack of exercise, that little missing a few days here and there, enough to cause people to lose weight? What's it all about? And, I've always told my members and people that I come in contact with that even training for a marathon or an ultra or an Ironman, I never have to worry about eating more to keep my weight from going down too much. my weight may fluctuate a pound or two one way or the other, and if I watch a little bit before a race, I can get a little bit leaner for the race, because obviously you can go a little faster if you're a little lighter. But for the most part, I don't lose any weight during all those hot, humid training sessions in the summer. And, I'm swimming, biking, running, for the Ironman. I'm running now, so I'll run 55 miles a week, 60 miles a week in peak training. I'm swimming 2,200 meters currently. I might get that up to 3,000, 4,000 by the time I'm ready for the swim run. And my weight won't change appreciably. So if my weight doesn't change, then, I tell people in my practice, walking 3 miles 3 times a week is not going to really be what makes or breaks you. So if you look at caloric burn for exercise, there's more calories in running than walking. But for the most part, and the bigger you are, you burn a little bit more calories per hour. For instance, basic metabolic rate, people that are heavier burn more calories. You have to pump blood. If you run, you may burn a few more calories. But I started reading a new book called Burn by Herman Pontzer. He's a PhD, and he's an anthropologist. And he's saying that, really, he kind of goes along with me. It's what you do with your activity is really not going to make or break you as far as your weight goes or significant weight loss. And he even goes further to say that, the macronutrients that you eat, whether it's whether it's protein, carbohydrates, or fats, that's not going to make that big a difference. And it turns out, no matter how fast you run, it doesn't really make that difference, much of a difference. A few 50, 100, 200 calories here or there, but again, not a huge difference. And turns out that the more we exercise, the hungrier we get, and we take in more calories. Or if we starve ourselves, our metabolism starts to slow down a little bit, so our body knows how to conserve energy. So our caloric burn really is, we self-regulate, whether we're taking in more calories or taking in less calories. We self-regulate to some degree. And when it comes down to weight loss, it doesn't matter whether it's protein, carbohydrate, or fat. It's total amount of energy in, total amount of energy out, just like everybody said for years. But, it doesn't sell near as many books if you can't have a diet that, demonizes fat or protein or carbohydrates. But Dr. Pontzer looked at a hunter-gatherer tribe in the Congo, the Hadza, and they actually they eat a lot of honey, which is metabolized for the most part just like high fructose corn syrup. They eat tubers and berries, and they eat some meat. Their diet is predominantly carbohydrate, and it's relatively low in fat. They don't have cardiovascular disease or any other lifestyle diseases, and they're about 10% body fat. And, you could say, well, these guys are, exercising all day long and hunting and for their food, and so they burn a lot more calories. Turns out they don't burn much more calories than the average standard American. But their ability to conserve their energy to meet their requirements adjust. And basically, what he discusses is that our brain, has the ability to kind of turn on hunger, turn off hunger, and we adjust things accordingly. And it's a lot easier to do that when we're not eating processed food. So if you look at, the bad thing in the standard American diet, it's the processed foods and our ability to actually have our body recognize those foods and control our intake. So you might say, well, Dr. Dulaney, then why are we listening to a plant-based wellness podcast if it doesn't really matter what we eat as long as we just control energy in and energy out? And theoretically, we should be able to live on Twinkies or Snickers if we just eat the right amount, and we'll be okay. Well, again, it comes down to being able to adjust and be mindful of just eat one. And we know the way processed food companies are designed is to have us not be able to eat just one. Nobody eats one M&M. Nobody eats one potato chip. You might eat one potato, but you're probably going to eat more than one French fry, even though most people say they don't. And that's the other problem, is that as humans, we're really not very good at reporting what we eat. We're off on average about 30%. So when people mark down on their iFit or their whatever app they use to track their caloric intake, it's bare minimum off 30. And that doesn't even take in portion control and error. Same way goes for the calories that you expend on the elliptical machine at the Planet Fitness versus the LA gym or wherever you might go, or however expensive it is. They're based on mathematical models that are not really all that accurate either. So we don't know how much we're burning, and we don't know how much we're taking in. And when we eat processed food, we don't even understand we lose our ability to actually kind of stop what we're doing and take in as much. We lose track of how much we're taking in. So again, back to, well, why be plant-based if that doesn't count? But it's more than just calories. So and that's what I've talked to people in my practice about for a long time. It's more than just losing weight to achieve health. Again, most of lifestyle diseases in America and first world countries are based on metabolic excess. It's not because we don't have enough of it, it's because we have too much of. So we have too much energy coming in, not enough, too much energy coming in for what we burn. What we burn is not all that variable. But the kind of energy we have coming in is also very important as far as our lifestyle diseases. For instance, if you're eating plants, you're getting fiber, and fiber helps us to feel full. Fiber feeds our gut microbiome. It helps decrease our cholesterol absorption. We also take in phytonutrients, antioxidants with our plant-based foods that decrease blood flow into potential cancers, to stop them from occurring, to decrease damage, the potential DNA damage that may spur cancers, to decrease inflammation. So that's where what we eat becomes very important, as opposed to just the energy value of what we eat. If you're eating salty, processed French fries, you eat too many of them, chances are, but you're also getting inflammatory omega-6s, saturated fat, the ability to make cholesterol, salt that is inflammatory, as well as will cause the retention of water and accelerate blood pressure. So eating, again, goes back to eating a more natural, plant-based, hunter-gatherer type food would be optimal. So back to your tubers, which would be sweet potatoes, white potatoes, yams, carrots, rutabagas, beets, so root vegetables, as well as other vegetables that we have, and fruits are, again, full of vitamins and minerals and antioxidants and fiber, but also provide us with the fiber to tell our bodies, hey, we've had enough. And it's also important to get enough, and I say this with a grain of salt, enough protein in our plant food by selecting grains and beans as a part of our diet, so that we don't, that we feel full, feel satisfied. Because the other part of the equation, you can put somebody in nutritional jail for a while, but when the door is open, then people run for all those so-called comfort foods, or foods to fill them up and make them feel better. I hear it over and over again. I heard it this week. Well, I do really good when I go out because I just order a salad. And yes, that's good, and I don't mind. I don't mind ordering a salad. It's no problem for me to sit there and eat a salad while other people are having full meals. The problem is when you get home. If you get home and it's late and you're still hungry and you keep grazing, even if it's on plant foods, then the plant foods tend to start becoming more calorie-dense foods or more comfort foods, and the total energy in starts to exceed what your daily burn is. So that's where the problem comes in. The other problems with people that already have lifestyle diseases, then there's already a dysfunction of metabolism to start with. So can't get the glucose into the cell because fat's blocking the cell, need more insulin, you have more inflammation. And so that also plays a role into it. So if we go back to the Hadza African tribe, they don't have the lifestyle diseases, makes things a little bit more simple. They don't have the choice, they don't have the lifestyle diseases, and things are more naturally dialed in. They also have to worry about getting eaten by a lion, infectious disease, and poor water, but that's on the side. If I have someone that's really struggling trying to be plant-based and it's making them so anxious and so worried, and it's such a struggle to make the food, that's a recipe for disaster. It's just like anything else. When they try to contain themselves, when they fall off and go back the other direction, it's going to be a huge swing in the other direction. And you can liken that to, there was the study done on The Biggest Loser, and those people lost hundreds of pounds after, being severely calorically restricted. They made it out like they were exercising 4 or 5 hours a day, and I'm sure they were exercising, but the biggest thing is they were severely calorically energy restricted. And so when they were left to their own and they followed up with them, and 7 years later, they'd all gained their weight back. And some of their metabolism had actually been compromised by it, because they had been in such a state of starvation that their body had actually adjusted to the low calorie intake that they were doing. So when they went back to their old ways of eating, it was much worse, because their metabolism had dropped down much lower than it had previously, and they started eating the very calorie-dense foods, and they gained all the weight back plus more. So the idea is not to put yourself in nutritional jail, to do things slowly and do them comfortably, and do things because you want to do them, not because people are making you do them, or you're making somebody else do them. I had the pleasure of becoming plant-based, becoming vegan, because I chose to, not because I was sick and I had to make some radical change all of a sudden. It's much more difficult for people that are doing this because they're already sick, and they have to do something emergently. Now, that's not to say that by doing this radical change that they're not going to get benefits from it. It's the sustainability. So that's where we like to work with people where they are and meet them where they are. And it may be such that they're going to have some meat in their diet, but then it becomes, are they going to be mindful enough to control the portions? And then when they're educated about, well, I'm going to have a little bit of this once in a while, does it really matter? Most of the time, people come around and say, you know what, I feel so much better on a plant-based diet that I really don't want this. I don't think it's the same with processed food. I think that any diet out there, the reason why they work both from a health standpoint and weight standpoint is you're going to get rid of processed food. So things that have additives in them, chemicals in them, labels in them that are a paragraph, I don't think anybody can control them for the most part. And there's going to be metabolic waste, and I don't think they're good for anybody over periods of time. So that's not, that's not where I meet people where they are. I meet people when it comes down to macronutrients for the most part. And I thought it was very interesting in his book when he looked at, people, the high fat, for the most part, people do, high fat is associated with cardiovascular disease, lifestyle diseases. And although, these hunter-gatherer societies eat protein, it's a very lean protein. There's very little fat in their diet. It's a low-fat diet, and a lot of high-fiber, complex carbohydrates and simple carbohydrates. The other thing that people talked about that he talked about in the book was the tribal relationship. As humans, we like to be part of a tribe. That's one thing we do. We share our food. We share our living quarters, environments with other people. We're part of a social group, and we need that. And sometimes when people become plant-based by themselves, they lose that tribal connection to their people, so to speak. So I've been putting that question out there. Who's your tribe? Who are the people that you hang out and you can depend with? Can you put your differences aside and come up with things that you are like other people, even though your nutritional difference may be different? And I think that's where it has to be, because there's not going to be a lot of people that are plant-based for the most part, especially early on. So, in this era of being black and white, and yes, you're vaccinated, or no, you're not vaccinated, or yes, you're a Democrat, no, you're a Republican, no, you're this, you're not, these teams that we put people on, you're either with me or without me. I think that we need to take time to look at what do you define as your tribe. Can you be around people that have nutritional difference but have other similarities? And again, down to the basic, we're all people. We all want to be healthy. We all love our families. And so start to look for similarities as opposed to differences. And don't worry so much about what other people eat. And maybe have that conversation with your tribe members that, hey, I eat a little bit different than you, but it's okay. It doesn't bother me where you are. I'm not going to try to change the way you eat. This just happens to be the way I eat. I had that conversation with our nutrition class today, and we've had our nutrition class despite COVID and restrictions, and some people may call it cavalier. We relied on people to not come if they were sick and make their own choices. But it's been a tribe for people. It's been someplace where they can go with like-minded people, share a meal, learn about something that they're passionate about without being judged, and to have a group. So if you can find a group like that, whether it's a meetup group or you have to find your tribe. It certainly helps if you possibly can. And our nutrition class is very different. The people in the nutrition class, very different backgrounds, come from different places. If you've been in Florida or know anything about Florida, most of us aren't native Floridians. We've come from someplace else with different ethnic backgrounds, different heritage, different ways of life, different jobs, different careers. And the thing that we have in common in the nutrition class is that people are eating plant-based. So all those other differences fall by the side, so that we can, have a moment to eat plant-based and not have to defend our nutritional choices. So one option is to have people over for a plant-based meal. Just have people over to share in fellowship and other interests that you have in common. And don't talk about the food. If it comes up, you can, say what you're having and have a little conversation. But I still think the best way around it is to make people curious. When people are curious, they're more likely to ask questions and to be less defensive about their own choices. And, I think it's good to just tell people you're okay with their choices, and they have the right to make their choices, and you support them in it. The most important thing to me is to be able to continue to have a dialogue. For instance, J&J just pulled sunscreens off the market because of carcinogens. A lot of people have known about them for years. Dermatologists don't want people to get terrible sunburns, but sunscreen in and of themselves, they're very much absorbed, especially the spray kinds, and can cause as much problems. And they actually block the wrong kind of UV radiation, so it probably doesn't protect against melanoma for the most part anyway. It may protect against some squamous or basal, but again, it may cause something along the other side. So, I live in Florida. I try not to get sunburn. I'll cover up. To keep from getting sunburn, I usually try to get a gradual tan. Some people don't tan. They're very fair, and that makes it much more difficult. But if I get a little bit starting in the spring, I don't burn, and I like the vitamin D exposure. But nevertheless, J&J, same people making the vaccines, have been less than honest about some of their products. Same thing with Bayer, who now owns, the company that owns Roundup. More and more in that is coming to light. We talked about it in class, Roundup you spray on your weeds. You don't want to pull weeds, but that's a carcinogen that is dangerous to you, but also dangerous to the water, dangerous to pets that come in contact with it. So, these companies are less than honest, and I think we need to be able to ask questions of any product, but especially when it comes to drug companies, they need to be forthright and open. And to think that anybody should take them on a this won't hurt you, there's no side effects. There's side effects to everything. And as individuals, we have to base the risk versus benefit to each of us on an individual basis. So, again, I come back to it. We should be able to ask questions. You should be able to ask questions of drug companies, of your physician. And if somebody says there are no risk, that's just not so. I liked in Dr. Pontzer's book, he made reference to a lot of diet so-called gurus on, what they think our ancestors ate. He's like, they weren't anthropologists. They've never been to a dig. Everybody just speculates. And there's still a lot of debate. And when somebody says, I know everything, and that's usually a recipe for disaster, because there's a lot of things that we don't know and still evolving. And again, when I read some of these things, it does make me question plant-based nutrition. Is this the best thing that I can recommend for 100% of my patients? And probably the answer is no. Again, if it comes down to that it is stressing one of my patients so bad that they're going to have a heart attack because they can't feed themselves, then that's not doing them any good. So I need to back up and take a step and educate people and let them make choices at their own rate. But also we have to have a dialogue on, again, a dialogue that I had this week. Well, why can't I have fish and chicken? And it's like, certainly, if you want fish and chicken, that's going to be your choice. But the difference would be the metabolic waste that you accumulate with it. So how much are you going to have? And they said, well, portion size. And it's like, well, I don't know, 4 ounces every once in a while. And it's like, only 4 ounces? And it's like, yeah, that's the problem, because when you have the piece of fish or they have the piece of chicken, you have the PCBs, the dioxins, the saturated fat and cholesterol that goes with it. So portion control has to be thought of, because of not so much the macronutrient, not so much of the taste, but because of the metabolic side effects that you have from these things. But it's still your choice. As an endurance athlete, I have injured myself on occasion. Do as I say, not as I do. Sometimes falls is advice that I may give somebody, because I have done stupid human tricks like everybody else and pushed it a little too far and got injured. Probably my biggest running injuries have been throwing my back out from decreased hip mobility and basically stretching and muscle imbalance to Achilles tendonitis. And there was a recent article that did a randomized trial looking at Achilles tendonitis, looking whether or not you could inject platelet-rich plasma to get people back on their feet quicker. And I did a relay with some friends many years ago, and in training for that event and training for a marathon, I got Achilles tendonitis. And I tried to run through it and did some things, and it kept getting worse. And finally, when the race was about ready to start, I did not want to not be able to do the relay with these people, so I got an injection of steroids into my Achilles, which was complicated by a bruise into the tendon and kind of made things worse before it made things better. I managed to hobble through part of the relay, didn't do my part, did part of my part, and then had to do the long rehab process afterwards. But this trial was to look whether you took your plasma and they spin it down and they inject this platelet-rich plasma, and looked at 6 months whether or not people did better. And the reality of it is they didn't. And, again, your Achilles hurt and they injected and it was inflamed, and so the treatment was aimed at the part that hurt, But that really wasn't the part that was causing the problem. So if anybody's had Achilles problems or plantar fasciitis, Achilles is that big tendon in the back that attaches your calf muscles to your heel. And it's usually not the Achilles that's got weak that caused the problem. It is the calf muscle above it that became tight and was ignored, and then finally pulled and pulled and pulled on the Achilles until there was injury. So it can be a complete tear, or it can be a lot of inflammation. But that's where the problem is. So again, injecting at the site didn't make a darn bit of difference as far as people's recovering, because the treatment wasn't aimed at where the problem is. So, a hint, looking at injuries, especially running and exercise injuries and extremity injuries, it's not really where the pain is. It's usually above it, could be below it, but for the most part, it's usually above it or around it that's causing the problem. My back went out. It wasn't really my back. It was more my hip, the imbalance of the muscles around my hip. When I fixed those, my back got better. If you address your calf muscles, and there's a lot of them that come together down to form that big tendon, by doing some mobility work there, you can make that go away pretty quick. But you can stretch all you want, that Achilles, and inject all you want into that Achilles tendon, and it's not the inflammation or the problem's not going to go away until you fix what's actually causing the problem, not the result of the problem. And I think, in conclusion, that's a lot of what we do in medicine, is that we treat the thing that we can see, but we don't look at what's actually causing the problem and the fix that we're in. And, back to nutrition, it is, what kind of nutrients are we taking in, and how much energy are we taking in? If it's a blood pressure, what is causing the blood pressure problem? What is causing the blood vessel problem? And we need to look at the bottom line for what, the underlying cause, as opposed to just treating the consequence of what's going wrong. So, if you're wearing your tires out because you have your parking brake on and you're trying to drive with it and you're scooting your tires along and you wear them out, just getting new tires is not going to fix it. You need to take your parking brake off. Probably a stupid analogy for any mechanics out there or any car people, but you get the point. So again, in our practice, we try to address the underlying cause, not just treat the symptoms. We hope to give people a optimal health and wellness, not just a Twinkie diet that will allow them to maintain their weight where they want it, but a diet that's rich in nutrients and antioxidants and fiber that will allow them to remain healthy from all lifestyle diseases and to become active. And to become mobile so that they can actually exercise and keep all those systems going. So if you'd like to join our practice, we do have a cap on membership, but as long as there's spaces, you can go on over to drdulaney.com and see the plans we have to offer. We have a large website with webinars on nutrition, cooking, exercise, videos, lectures, as well as Zoom classes. And we have a private Facebook page. Our online members have access to that. Level 1 member gets a consult from Addie once a month, our registered dietitian. And a level 2 gets a call from me and Addie. Everybody gets access to our vast website information. And our full membership, you have access to us as much as you need, and we can participate in your medical care. So I'd love to help you, whether it's learning more about plant-based nutrition, exercise, lifestyle diseases. I believe most of these lifestyle diseases will go away if we just get people in the right nutritional path. But I also think we need to do it in accordance with their lifestyle and their psyche, so that we can help people be healthy and happy. Thank you, as always, for listening. You can email me at jami@drdulaney.com. It's Jami at drdulaney.com. I would love for you to go over to iTunes and give me a 5-star rating so we can get this podcast out to more people. You can check out what we eat with our cookbook, plant-based wellness cookbook, The Doctor, the Dietitian, and the Diva, and that's available on Amazon. And if you like coffee, you can go over to groundsandhounds.com, Sophie says, and my friends will help you out, get some good ground coffee and help a dog in the process. You've heard a lot from Sophie today on the podcast. She has, we're inside doing the podcast, and she's kind of wanting to play a little bit more ball than I can do while doing a podcast. But nevertheless, I've been accompanied by Sophie and Gretchen and Vinny too. So we all thank you for listening and hope to talk to you next week. And I have a couple good interviews coming up, so stay tuned. Thank you.